Hi everyone! So today I'm going to be sharing with you performance tips on the Erlkönig, the transcription based on Schubert's original song, transcribed by Liszt. And first to talk a little bit about the poem itself by Goethe. So it's about a very sick child, and through the darkness of the night in the dark forest, and the very worrisome father is trying to get the child rushing to see the doctor. So basically that's the background of the story. And in the middle of this journey in the dark forest, the child starts to hallucinate, and he sees the Erlkönig. And the Erlkönig at first is very persuasive, very sweet, very mysterious, and then finally he becomes extremely forceful. And at the end of the story, the child dies. So when it's transcribed by Liszt for the piano, the pianist has to be 4 different characters. At first, it's a narrator, and then the father, the child, and then the Erlkönig. And everyone knows that this piece is extremely challenging, and mostly it's because of people think about the octaves that's being very challenging. But I think it's not just that, it's also being able to play the urgency and the characters that the poem requires. So first, I'm going to be talking about the octaves. So the octaves, it is hard, and what do we do with it? So I have found that, the octaves are hard not just because it's repeated, but at the same time it's because it needs to have sound. It needs to have forte sound. And when you want to play forte sound with octaves, the sound shouldn't come from just the wrist, because it should come from the entire forearm, going like in this motion, and it will give it enough sound. And I always think about this piece as being like you're in a triathlon, because it's like one difficult passage after another difficult passages. So I would highly suggest you practicing in like small increment, like small section, and build up the stamina, and then put it together. It's much easier that way. So at first, about the octaves. So you want to have sound, but at the same time it's also presto. So you want to have sound and speed. And in order to have sound, you can do this way. Yeah, so it would give you enough sound, like this motion. And in order for the speed, I think for me, it has worked very well if I move this way. So I move. So you see that the music is going like this, even with a single note. Some pianists who have very, very big hands, it might work very well for them. So today this is like a little video about how I learned it and what has helped me. And if anybody has very good tips, please leave in the comments below. Let's share with each other tips to play this piece. So with the octaves, so it helps with just 2 motions. One is just going like this, and second is simply by moving the body a little bit back and forth, rather than this way. This becomes very difficult because your hand is in the same motion again and again, and it becomes very difficult. And when the left hand comes in, left hand, it's the same thing. It's like one gesture. Always think about it as a moving forward rather than it being static. I find that to be very helpful. And so with the first passage, I actually find that it's very challenging to keep soft, especially with this very fast, large octave chords, especially like here. And so when you have this kind of large chords, think about it in a very scientific way. You don't want to be too far away from the keyboard. It's different from the beginning where you need forte sound. So here you have, just try to stay as close to the keys as possible. And then where here it comes in the melody. So you're basically using left hand thumb to play the melody. I have found that don't try to hold on to the octaves because the sound becomes a little bit too static, and you don't need it. Yeah. So this is also another part where the narrator is describing what is happening at the beginning of the story. And finally, when the father comes in right here. And then the child comes in. Father comes in. And then the Erlking comes in for the first time. So I have found that this section is very interesting, and it's important to be able to have very distinctive characters and sound for each of the characters. So when the father comes in, father is always the lower voices. And then child is always upper, and child is frightening. And so it helps to practice just the melody in its position. And then when the melody is so close to the horse, when the melody is so close to the repeated chords, you would want to. One of the keys that has helped me is that you don't hold on. And then the same thing with your broken chords. Try to stay as close to the keys as possible. I remember I was working on Schubert C minor Sonata 958 when I was back at Juilliard, and I remember the broken chords back then. So I think once you have this motion for the broken chords to play it in repeated sessions very fast and evenly, it will come, because then it's going to work for all the pieces that require that. So it might as well be the Erlkönig. And then when we get to the Erlking, for the first time, the Erlking is very mysterious, and he says, "Child, come to me," and then he wants to deliver the most beautiful things to him. So the first time Erlking comes in for the transcription, it's B flat major. And notice that Schubert wrote, or Liszt wrote pianissimo. Okay, so for this part, I actually consider this to be one of the most difficult parts in the entire transcription, because of the many of the broken chords, they are between black key and white keys, and very oftentimes it's very easy to just have it a little bit off, a little bit round notes here and there, and it becomes just, then it just is not great. And also left hand, this is also very difficult, especially yeah. So when you practice this, it's important to get this the chords between. And again, this is, if you have huge hands, it probably would work really well. But when you have smaller hands, it's not only to find it in positions, and you also need to move a little bit faster to get to the chords. And again, with the same with the right hand, the difficulty lies in black keys and white keys. And one of the ways to fix that is simply, whenever possible, try to move your hands just a little bit outside of the black key area, if you can. So because if you're playing here, it's very easy to have round notes. And then simply learn left hand like crazy. Yeah, so this section is the first time Erlkin comes. And then the child becomes even more frightened. Tries to reassure the child. Okay, so and then the Erlkin comes in for the second time, and this time he becomes very lovingly and very sweet. So this time when it becomes very sweet, it's in C major. The same with the B5 major, it is tricky because Liszt added in inner notes between the octave melody. Slow motion. So when you have these octaves, you will always want to try to bring out the pinky much more and play it as just one gesture. And then same thing with the left hand. Practice this a lot of left hand. So it reminds me a little bit about ballerinas when they're doing all those very, very difficult passages and they have to look so graceful and so beautiful. It's the same with here. It's like you're playing such difficult passages, but you have to play it sweetly and at the same time extremely light. So this is one of the, it's not just to be able to play the notes, but it's to also be the character, be the Erlkin. And here, after Erlkin comes in, the child is even more frightened. So here he goes. So each time after Erlkin appears, the child gets more and more and more frightened. And the father tries to reassure the child. And then Erlkin comes back for the third time. And he says that you don't want to come with me, then I will take you by force. And here in the music, it says it's molto appassionata. He's extremely passionate. And here actually indicates that the tempo slows down a little bit. So here is the third alcan. Comes in for the last time. And then the child comes in for the last time, and here the child is hysterical already. He's afraid and he's losing it basically. And then we go back to the narrator, to the horse, and the horse goes faster and faster and faster as it rushes through the night. And it stops. Narrator. Diminished. The child is dead. Yeah, so about this transcription, of course, I guess it helps to play it in a conservative way, and to take a little bit slower tempo or play it carefully, and then you will have less round note. But I think that is not the most important thing here. The most important thing is to play what a poem asks you, and it's literally this kind of urgency and desperation and the sinister alcan. And if you're very careful, then the characters don't come out as well. I would much prefer to have a performance that is not 100% clean. Of course, it's not to say it's mistakes everywhere, but it's not 100% clean, but it has all of these characters, and you can sincerely feel this tragedy of it. And it would mark a extremely successful performance. So that's my performance tips about the Erlkönig. If anyone has tips about playing this piece, please leave in the comments below. Let's share with each other. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, please do so now. And I guess I'll see you next time.